Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. In this video, I am going to be showing you a new palette fill and subsequent swatching for a specialty palette. I was a bit late to the game with Schmincke's new super granulating colors when they were released last year. After I had the opportunity to try some of them out, thank you to the viewer who sent me some samples, I knew I wanted to use a few of them a bit more extensively. My main palette is pretty full at this point, so a new palette pour was in order, but I knew I wanted to have a bit more flexibility in a palette than these convenience colors were able to offer on their own. However, I still wanted to play around with the idea of an all-granulating palette, so I turned to Schmincke's lineup to find some additional single pigment colors to add to some of my favorite convenience mixtures. You may have seen some of these colors in my recent Jackson's haul, while others I already had on hand, both from my own previous purchases, as well as a few that Schmincke sent me way back when they released their new colors in 2017. I swatched them out on scraps of paper for planning purposes, and after some planning and eliminations that were necessary to reduce the palette to 18 colors, I finally landed on this assortment. Overall, there are 8 super granulating colors, 9 single pigment granulating colors, and 1 dual pigment color that also happens to granulate but is not part of their super granulating line. We'll go over the selections in more detail throughout the video, but needless to say, this is not a standard or balanced palette, so please keep that in mind if you are new to watercolors. This is very much a specialty palette in addition to the standard mixing palettes that I have elsewhere in my collection. Before we get into the swatching and color information, I have some nice relaxing palette fill footage for you. You can find links to all the supplies I'm going to be using in this video listed in the description below. I will see you on the other side once everything is set up in place. Schmincke's super granulating line of watercolors are paints made with 2 or more granulating pigments. They do not necessarily granulate more than a single pigment color might, but they tend to feature lovely washes that separate into 2 different colors. As a note, this palette does contain more toxic paints than I typically work with. I will note which ones I have found to be toxic in my own research, but as with any product, please research them thoroughly yourself before using them in your home. Handle them with care, don't lick your paintbrushes or otherwise ingest the paint, and dispose of both the paints themselves and your paint water properly for the area you live in. Moving into the swatches, first up we have one of the new colors called Tundra Orange. It is made from Potter's Pink, a version of PBR7, my guess would be on a raw sienna-like version, and a yellow ochre. If you squint your eyes or look at it from far away, it appears to be a light brown, but up close you can see a pinkish brown granulation in a wash of a yellow earth tone. While definitely not a bright, light, or pure yellow, this is the closest to a yellow that I have on this palette, and it actually surprised me quite a bit. While some of the blues and greens we're going to take a look at are mesmerizing on their own, my love of earth tones with the fact that I paint wildlife will keep me coming back to this one time and time again. Mars Brown is a single pigment made from PBR6. This color is a little bit more neutral than a burnt sienna, but falls into that mid-reddish brown range. In the middle of this swatch, you can really see that darker granulation settling into the paper. Galaxy Brown is actually very similar to both Mars Brown and the next color that we'll be looking at. It is a lovely middle brown with a purpley violet granulation made from Mars Brown and Cobalt Violet hue, which is made from the rather uncommon PV62. The latter pigment is hard to find information on. I think it's still relatively new, but Blick regards it as non-toxic in their pigment information. I purchased this color before seeing how close it was to my other browns, and had I checked it first, I might not have ended up purchasing it. The third brown on this palette is another warm one. In fact, it's the warmest brown on the palette. I adore Mahogany Brown, made from PBR33, a relatively uncommon pigment that granulates heavily. The top notes of this color are similar to a deep burnt sienna, while the granulation in it is more reminiscent of an Indian red. This pigment may cause skin irritation, but has not been identified as hazardous as far as I can tell in my research. Speaking of Indian red, I finally tried out Schmincke's version here. I'm fairly positive that I never tried it out before because it was a dual pigment color and I love my standard Indian red so much, so I never bothered. While nearly all of Schmincke's colors are buttery smooth in the pan, this version is not as smooth on the paper as, say, M. Graham's Terra Rosa. This version has much more granulation, giving it a much more textured look. To cap off this row, we have not Potter's Pink, but instead Galaxy Pink. I wrote the names down incorrectly, but have edited them in the final scan for you at the end of this video. Galaxy Pink is made from Manganese Violet and Mahogany Brown, making it entirely unnecessary to have purchased on its own for this palette since I have both of those single pigment colors. But the heart wants what it wants, and I love the hue of this convenience mixture. I'm honestly quite curious to see how often I'll reach for the convenience over the individual components that make it up, but I suppose only time shall tell. Manganese Violet is highly toxic if inhaled and is moderately toxic if ingested. Next up, we do have Potter's Pink, made from PR233. Schmincke's version of this color is a deep brownish pink mixture with lots of granulation. You can find out more about Potter's Pink in the corresponding color spotlight video that I will link in the card in the right-hand corner. Here we have Manganese Violet, made from PV16. This light and bright purple has lovely granulation and is pretty unique on this palette in particular. There's no other purple like it. It is highly toxic if inhaled and moderately toxic if ingested. Next up is another super granulating color, Tundra Pink. This one took me a bit by surprise in terms of how much I actually enjoy it. It's made from ultramarine blue and Potter's Pink. The smoother of the hues is this soft underlying violet, while there is a granulation that is very clearly impacted by that Potter's Pink settling into the texture of the paper. I think this one would be really fun in an atmospheric landscape. Up to this point, I had only tried Ultramarine Finest from Schmincke, which is an incredibly smooth ultramarine that a lot of people who don't like granulation enjoy. However, I was very excited to finally try their French ultramarine, which heavily granulates, and this one did not disappoint. I'll still need to use it in some paintings before I can give you my full opinion on it for any of the new to me colors in this video really, but so far so good. Glacier Green was an early fan favorite and for a good reason. It is a lovely soft cobalt turquoise with a unique Potter's Pink granulation that is falling into that texture of the paper. However, this is one that I actually have used in a couple of paintings already, and I hate to break it to you if it's on your wish list, but this color is actually really hard to use in actual paintings. I thought that this would be good for portrait backgrounds, and it can be. However, you will need to be a confident painter who gets it right on the first attempt. Due to its liftability, going over a wash a second time for any reason is complicated and risky. Even with my super soft black velvet brushes, trying to gently darken a wash on a painting actually caused some pretty noticeable back runs. Instead of the soft and playful color that we saw on the simple sample swatch, it is much more mottled and distracting in this application, which is why it's always important to remember that while swatches are helpful in choosing our colors, ultimately you need to use them in practical applications before knowing how you'll truly feel about them. As a note, PG50 is considered toxic. Next up is Deep Sea Green, a lovely teal blue color made from Viridian and Ultramarine. I don't have a lot to say about this one other than it's a lovely ocean blue that I look forward to using more in the future. Viridian is a pigment that contains trace amounts of a known carcinogen and should be handled with care. Here we have Cobalt Azure, a cerulean color made from PB35. This was one of the colors that was sent to me by Schmincke for the new 2017 lineup. This version leans warmer towards red, though they also have a Cobalt Cerulean made from PB36 that leans closer to green if you prefer that. This pigment is moderately toxic if inhaled or ingested. Schmincke's Cobalt Turquoise is made from PG50 and is a very vibrant yet softly granulating color. I also have a color spotlight episode on this pigment if you'd like to learn more about it. I'll link a card up above. PG50 is considered toxic. Forest Blue reminds me of Perylene Green's granulating cousin or sibling. This color is made from PB36, which I believe would be their Cobalt Green Turquoise rather than the Cobalt Cerulean, and Mars Black. It is a moody, desaturated, granulating bluish green color. It's really beautiful. PB36 is moderately toxic if inhaled or ingested. You may already have noticed that a lot of these super granulating names don't really fit the hue of the color if you're looking at them on their own, but regardless, here is Forest Brown. It is a natural mossy looking green made from Cobalt Green Dark, a version of PBR7. Alice Lim has a video theorizing that is a raw dark umber, and a yellow ochre. Cobalt Green Dark is considered a slightly toxic pigment. The greenest green on this palette is Cobalt Green Dark itself. It says deep on the sheet, but it should say dark, and it is made from PG26. This is a dark, desaturated, cool green that leans slightly towards blue. Cobalt green dark, also known as chromium oxide, is slightly toxic. Finally, we have Mars Black, made from PBK 11. We just saw a heavily granulating version of this pigment in my Roman Schmalz video. This version from Schmincke is much less granulating. It is a mostly neutral black with soft granulation that looks like pretty average black, if I'm being honest. Here are all 18 colors lined up for you with the names of Galaxy and Potter's Pink digitally swapped. You can find a high-resolution scan over on Patreon, and the link is in the description below. I haven't done any fully finished pieces in this palette yet, but I do have some sketches to show you before you go so that you can see how a few examples look in a sketch. The first page here was done on the white cover Etcher sketchbook. Each dolphin was painted with a single color using as few brushstrokes as possible. The top is glacier green and the bottom is deep sea green. This gives you an idea of how they look at different dilutions and with layering. You can see that both colors get really heavy and a little bit unwieldy in their mass tones. Next, we have a few more chickens that I sketched on a Patreon live stream on Arch's cold press paper. The brown chicken was painted using tundra orange and mahogany brown. The green chicken was painted using forest brown and forest blue, and the blue chicken was painted using glacier green and potter's pink. These sketches were also painted using as few strokes as possible. I really enjoyed the top two, but you can see again that the glacier green gave me a bit of trouble in that mass tone. You can watch the whole process over on Patreon if you like and find out why that one chicken ended up with a plague doctor mask. Finally, we are back in the Etcher sketchbook with what is certainly a more complex piece, but is definitely still a sketch rather than a finished, polished painting. It was painted a while ago now, but I think that I used tundra orange, galaxy brown, Mars black, and forest blue as the main colors. You can see in the darkest areas that it was hard to get a dark black as the granulation causes the lighter washes from underneath to show through. It was still a lot of fun to paint, and that background was really satisfying to lay in. That is going to do it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for taking a look at this funky weirdo palette with me. I would love to hear what are some of your favorite granulating colors from Schmincke, whether in the super granulating line or not, and what are some of your favorite applications for them. Let me know in the comments below. Thank you all for watching, commenting, and subscribing if you'd like to see more content, and a huge thank you to my patrons for supporting what we're doing here. Until next time, happy painting.